Hi, I'm Britton LaRue, and this is Moon to Moon. Moon to Moon is a space to consider, celebrate, and share the ways we come home to ourselves, anchor through change, and uncover our power. 1 month, one phase, one loving step at a time. Hello, Moon to Moon. It's Britton, and welcome to the very first episode of Moon to Moon for 2025. I feel nervous. I feel that I have more shaky ground, or like a moving ground beneath me as I move into this episode. And that can feel scary to my body because I have these fears that I need to be extremely solid before I press record, or what will come out will be wonky and then I won't be proud, and because I didn't feel like I was creating something from an aligned place. And actually, that very thing is part of what I want to talk to you about today in this episode. So I'm going to run with we're not meant to get to full solidity because that's not what we're doing. That's maybe not what we're ever doing again. Welcome to 2025. So today, here in the first, real kind of back to work day that I've had since the holidays, I have been very creative. I've been doing a lot of creating for Unshaming Your Chart, and I've been doing a lot of noodling. I like to call it noodling. Actually, we'll write it on my to-do list. Noodle, which to me is I'm reading my journal and I'm taking notes on things that were going on in the past. And I'm looking at the transits and feeling into dates and storylines and meditating and pulling cards. And I just meander, which is basically my favorite thing to do, So there's something already coming through already since I opened my mouth here around what if noodling is grounding, and what if what I call grounding is a sensation of control that is actually an illusion. I'm just gonna set that on the table and let it just sit there, and we'll see if we come back to it. So, my girls are not in school yet. They start tomorrow. I'm recording this on Monday with an Aries moon rising at the east, and we'll be back in full-blown scheduled time starting tomorrow. Which, I hold a little grief about that because I love the liminal. I love the liminal between Christmas is complete and then we're not back in our schedules yet. It's just I just love that kind of no placeness of it. I really feel that's where I feel the most at home is in sort of the outside, the schedule dream space and the non-linear of that. And there's another part of me, paradoxically, who is just oh my gosh, it's going to feel so good to get back in the schedule. Yeah, it's so funny. This is exactly what it's like when I separate from Matt. Let's see where this goes. I didn't plan to bring this up. When I'm with Matt, it is just so, like, his presence is so seductive to me and magnetic to me, and I feel so soothed by him being near me, and I love feeling like close, even if we're not actually, even if we're side by side doing things. And we just separated, so now he's going to go back to his place, and there was one part of me that was like, don't go, like, the pain, don't leave. And another part of me is like, I cannot wait for him to get out of here so I can have my own space again. And what's really funny, I just realized just now as I was brushing my teeth, is, which is one of those kind of no place zones that can be fun. I realized, wow, Mars just went back into Cancer. Cancer rules my living quarters, like my private life, my house, my home. And I said to him this morning, you know, I just want to say I have no desire in me to live with you. And he's like, and I have no desire to live with you. Like, how about some Mars honesty right there? Just like, I love it when you're here, and then I need you to leave. It's so fascinating, right? This is Mars returns for me, number 2 of this whole retrograde experience, because I have Mars in Cancer in my 4th house. And, maybe, we don't, I've been teaching a lot, lately I've been teaching a lot on the feeling that I have, what I hold to be true, which is that you can never understand a placement in your chart all at once. You can only understand it partially, subjectively, based on like the random set of currents that you're currently in, looking at the world and your reality. And so it's like, wow, maybe one of the things my Mars in Cancer in the 4th house means is I've got to have a sense of sort of self-leading and self space is what I'm hearing around my own private world. But the story's not over yet. We don't know what's next in the story. Whenever we're in the thick of transits, in any cycle we're in, we cannot know what's around the river bend, what's around the corner. And so I like to look at the data that's present, collect the data, put it in my journal, tuck it away, and then watch how the story continues to unfold as I have experiences. So, tracking that story, so curious how you're doing, listeners, with the Mars retrograde. It has been, like all Mars retrogrades that I've been tracking since I found astrology, as a Mars-ruled person, I don't find it super fun in an egoic way. I feel that my will kind of disperses, it just sort of like scatters more and feels more like it has its own intelligence that often goes against what my manager parts and my egoic parts want from my will, or I want my will to feel very centered usually and very potent in its direction. And I do know myself to be that way most of the time. For me, I feel like I get pulled off course, and the Mars retrogrades always bring me spirals of healing that are extremely valuable and precious and welcome on the other side. But when I'm in the midst of it, I'm like, I get to find out all the judgers I have, basically. Let me just put it this way. I get to find out how judgmental I am, like some parts of me, at the parts of me that are just following the like different directions my will's suddenly taking me. And that's humbling. It's humbling to realize how powerful your judger is if you don't actually like personally identify with being judgmental of yourself. Like, I don't actually actively think of myself as judgmental with myself. And Mars retrogrades always bring my judger out because I go off course. And I get to find out how I have judgment around that. And none of this is a problem. It's really helpful because in that process, you get to do a lot of healing with your inner judge. So, yeah, I felt like laying all this bare and being honest today would be both sweet for me to experience for myself and could potentially be supportive to any of y'all out there who feel frustrated to enter a new year differently than maybe with the energy you usually have. And not everybody enters New Year's with like, let's do this kind of energy at all. But many do, and I think a lot of it is that every year we learn new things about our relationship to cyclicality as we find ourselves in different kinds of cycles. So that is all feeling like an interesting prelude. What I wanted to do today is share with you about some things coming online in my life, because usually that which is coming into form calendar-wise is also what is coming into potency, like teaching-wise, sharing-wise, astrological energies-wise, what the field is bringing us right now, and that presumably that's one of the reasons that anyone listening is listening here, because that's just this kind of stuff I talk about. What I like to do is tell you some about my relationship to time here under this Saturn-ruled sign of Capricorn, this Capricorn sun, and talk to you about some things that I've learned. I have 3 things that I would say from noodling with my journals that are really coming forward as some of the most powerful things that I learned in 2024. So I'm bringing them into the year, like holding them with gratitude for everything I went through to learn them and grateful to have them by my side as we go into this very interesting year ahead. This 2025 year is, it's got me pretty excited. And that doesn't mean I know anything about what's going to happen, but the energies that I feel into are very enticing to me. And I want to talk about looking into the future as well as I talk about looking at the past, all from the perspective of what we do have with us, which is the present moment, emergence astrology. So let's begin. One of the most exciting things that's coming into form right now in my life, I hope you will experiment with this if this sounds fun for you. But I've started another podcast. I've never had a second podcast before. I started a second podcast with someone else. So it's a co-hosting project. You may have already heard about it. It's called, get this. It's called Crystal Ballers. That's right. I cannot believe that this name wasn't taken. So let me tell you a little bit about it. Oh, such a great name. Many of you know that I have a friend and teacher and go-to healer whose name is Natasha Levenger. Natasha's been on Moon to Moon many times. Many of her episodes are top 10, top 20. We are longtime magical colleagues. Our careers started around the same time. And we have been cheerleading each other all of these years. There have been months and months in our friendship where we don't have any contact. And then something will happen, and then we'll be reconnected. And maybe I'll offer something to one of her classes, and she'll offer something to one of my classes. We're sending each other clients. We have many of the same colleagues and clients and students. We both have teen kids. And we're buds. We're buds who like to talk about business. We're super Piscean buds who love to talk biz. And Natasha, if you don't know her, is an energy healer, reader. She's an inner child healing, you could say, expert. I mean, she's pretty fucking expert, if we're going to use that word. She's ridiculously talented at healing psychic material, energy material, the past. She's was basically doing IFS before she never knew IFS existed, and but is also trained in IFS now and just weaves it into her own genius. And so much of what I understand about inner child healing, energy healing, working with times and dimensions, I've learned from being friends with or actively studying with or healing with Natasha Levenger. And we tell the backstory in our first episode, which just came out. As of the moment of me recording this, it's still not on Apple iTunes. So I'll put the link for iTunes in once it's fully up. It can take 5 days. But it's up on everything else. Our Crystal Ballers first episode. It's going to be a weekly show. We're going to have a guest once a month. And what we're doing is we are speaking to, in a conversational way, an intentional way, and in ways unforeseen that I am just trusting in, speaking to, working with time, the future, the present, the past, especially in terms of manifestation and participating and co-creating in life with your power, especially your power as a feeling being. Because the psychic and intuitive arts come from feeling abilities that we both care so much about, me and Natasha. So I'll say that For years, Natasha and I have been talking about how we're going to do something together. For years. And it just was like on the table, but we weren't drinking from the carafe yet, it just like wasn't time. It wasn't time. There was no urgency. We would just now and then be like, oh, I can't wait till we do that thing together we're going to do whenever that comes through. I don't know. And honestly, like this fall, our relationship suddenly changed. We started actively talking every day and doing really powerful, vocalizations together for basically manifesting from our dreams. And everything started happening way bigger and more amplified. And like we created so much love in our field together. And then we had the election. And then Pluto moved into Aquarius. And like basically instantly after Pluto moved into Aquarius in November, it was like, we need to start a podcast. It just happened like of its own engine. And it just do. And the thing that was left was like title. And we had these titles we were working with, and it's really cute because we both have these partners who cheerlead us and support us and who we adore. And I told Matt our ideas, and he was like, I think you should lean on Natasha's improv background. I think this needs to be comedic. Y'all are funny. And I was like, okay, I'll bring that back to Natasha. And at the moment, Natasha was with her partner, Brett. And she was like, Britton's saying that we need to be more comedic. And he goes, how about crystal ballers? And the four of us all at once were like, it's not going to get any better than that. Like, call off the dogs. Like, we found the name, and just it's like boom, boom, boom. It happened very, very quickly. We just reserved everything and began to be like, okay, when do we start? So, with the Mercury retrograde energies in December, it really felt like, let's wait to the other side of this and start at the end of December. So we recorded our first episode last week at the end of 2024 and then released on Friday. So the next one will be out this Friday. I'm inviting you to come explore with us, experiment with us. I have in the past had different types of like energy report things that I've explored. But this feels like it knows what it wants to be, but we don't yet fully know. We just know it's about bringing humans together inside of this field. This word field is coming forward really potently. The field of your ecosystem, the field of your community, the field of the voices around you, the beings that are around you. And our fields really affect us, like your ability to believe in, to trust in, to experiment with, to go for what is coming through you is going to be affected by the response, the affirmation, the questioning, the challenge of what's in your ecosystem, because we're not alone. We're constantly in our own fields, is how I see it, with other human beings and with non-human beings, with the unseen. And we notice, we humans, who, where, when, how, we go through these feelings of being rollicked, of being invalidated, feeling minimized. And, we know what that feels like in the body when we start to shut down or cave in or question ourselves or stifle ourselves or go stagnant, feel stuck. Because some part of us is like, it's not safe in the field, honestly, is what it feels like. And we also know what it's like when we get around other people. Other humans are a change in the earth space, a change in the environment, a change in circumstances, where we notice like more feels possible here. More feels possible. I feel like there's energy for curiosity. There's energy for experimentation. There's energy for playfulness. There's energy for humor. There's energy for audacity. And that this is supportive, especially when what we're talking about is like what world do you want to be in? Like what do you want from your worlds? Including the world that's at your feet, at the path that you're making right now. Looking at the future, the past, the present, in a kind of orienting to life, which is what we're always doing. So I would say that all of my spaces, to some extent, all of my classrooms, this podcast, all have as a spirit of the thing a desire to create a field where more feels possible. A field where more feels possible. And that's the spirit of this thing that I'm making with Natasha, who I'm blowing out a candle that needs to get blown out. With this, in this space with Natasha, because I want to see what happens when we put our fields together. So as I've seen how we did in the fall and like what happened for both of us as we amplified together, amplifying together feels bigger than amplifying on your own, even though please keep amplifying on your own too, So this feels super Pluto and Aquarius because, and I talk about this in the first episode of Crystal Ballers, we are melting the distortions that have us believing that we are separate from one another. To me, in Pluto and Aquarius, this does not mean we merge with other people. We lose ourselves, because in a fractal way, this is very Aquarian, in a fractal way, each different human here, we're speaking to the human field, each human has a particular song they're singing, vision they're bringing forward, a particular frequency that's part of what we're given in embodiment. And our bodies bring this into the world. And we are not isolated and separate in the sense that we are deeply affected by those that we have proximity to. And with the internet, we are more approximate to one another than we've ever been across time, space, asynchronously. And so our proximal, I'm not sure the word, resources don't have to be in the same zip code as us, And this feels so connected to the podcast that has consumed my attention in the last month, which is the new podcast called The Telepathy Tapes. I'll link it in the show notes. Please explore the Telepathy Tapes if you're at all interested in wonder, psychic abilities, interconnectedness, love. I can't say enough about the treasure that is the telepathy tapes. And to me, it feels deeply, deeply, deeply Pluto and Aquarius, and is like a guiding spirit into this new year. So thank you to the spirits that supported everyone on that podcast, making it possible that it happened for us, because it's incredibly inspirational and is deeply in my own field right now as I'm turning towards the year and feeling into where I am, where I've been, and what I'm dreaming. Oh, yeah. So Crystal Ballers, new show comes out on Fridays. It'll be more regular than Moon to Moon is, and more like consistently doing the thing that it does, or Moon to Moon does all kinds of things and refuses to follow structures. But I know what it's like to love a podcast for its reliability, for what it's bringing to you in a regular way. And I don't know that I could do a podcast like that unless I was doing it in collaboration. So we'll be linking to that. And please, 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 inviting you to rate and review it straight away, because that helps it get into algorithms and get into searches. And it's really, really supportive for podcasts to get attention ASAP. So thank you. If you love the show and it resonates with you, if you love us and you're trusting that it's going to be great, thank you for giving it a rating and review right away. Okay. Let me share with you then about the 3 things that I really feel that I was learning in the last year. So many of you know that last year was a really big year for me. There was no way it wasn't going to be a big year. There's no way to enter 2024 for me. Just just another year, on so many levels. I knew that Saturn is coming back and forth over my sun, which hasn't happened since 1994 when my dad died. And I had a lot of fear to move through around that, even though, of course, Saturn is my love, but it's still scary because that was such a horrific experience to move through. And it was oh gosh, what's going to happen? So I had that major astrological thing, no big deal, on top of my nodal opposition and my Jupiter return. And then I had my book coming out, my first published book coming out, and just feeling into that level of visibility and what can I do to support this book and how to show up to that, being loving to myself and loving to the project, and also being aware of judgy manager selves that I have too, who might make that all very uncomfortable and not fun. And having a lot of hopes and dreams around the containers that I wanted to create, and wanting to do a lot of really new things, knowing that, but not knowing what they were entering the year. I know when a year is going to be massively demanding creatively. And I knew it on January 1st of 2020. On January 1st of 2020, which is the year that I did all the self-published workbooks, I did 13 workbooks in 9 months, waking up at 4 a.m. to basically write all day long, editing after writing, marketing, shipping, everything, starting my first year-long class. It was a huge year. Huge. On January 1st, I remember I got back in bed by like 11 because I was like, I can't even deal with this year. Like, I can just tell today this is going to be a really huge creative year. I need to go back to sleep. Oh my God. There's even like a little post that I put out from it. I made a little meme of a kitten inside under the covers, like with teary eyes. And I wrote on it, I know what I need to do, but I'm scared. Yeah. Last year I felt that. It was not the exact same feeling because I wasn't also feeling what, eventually became COVID, like I was in 2020. But it was a huge year because I created the Underdog to Diva framework from scratch. I created Emergence Astrology Year 1. I completely redid Moon to Moon. And then eventually Unshaming Your Chart. So looking back and all that I was holding and all that I was moving through and all of the inner child healing I was doing through all of the things and the showing up to all facets of my life that I was doing in the midst of like some really intense public aspects of my life, which is not all that I am. When I look back, what I feel like I've learned in terms of the biggest headline of all is that leadership is not, for me, getting to a place where everything is clear and you always know what to do. It turns out leadership is, for me, becoming comfortable, or shall I say, supporting the parts of myself that feel uncomfortable with the confusion of being out at the edges of my creativity, going where I feel myself going, but not always knowing what to do or what the answer is. And I'm the one who makes the decisions. And I'm the one who destroys all other possibilities so that I can go this one particular direction that I feel myself called into going, but I don't have guarantees that it's the quote unquote right move or the quote unquote smart move, or that I won't regret it later. And so what does that mean? Getting more comfortable with like, what do I think failure actually is? Like, what do I actually think right or wrong is? What do I think it means to be correct? And of course, so much of that comes from disciplinary shame rhetoric and the conditioning that we have with shame that has us thinking that we have to do things perfectly or we have to do things just a certain way in order to consider ourselves good or in order to consider ourselves valid. And it was just a constant practice in bumping up against the parts of me that have conditioned limiting perspectives and learning how to relate to them in ways that are loving and compassionate, but don't run the show, which is, of course, all things that I teach, but it really had to fortify last year. And I felt extremely held. One of the reasons that I feel that I can trust myself in ways that I've never imagined I could possibly trust myself is because I allow myself to be supported, and I allow myself to be resourced, and I give myself a lot of space to be held and loved on and supported through the different things that I want to do. And that can come through, whether that's coming through having support with a lot of the admin aspects of my business in ways that I never thought I could trust anyone to do. Thank you to my beautiful assistant, Mary Kate, who is, it's such a healing experience to be supported this way. It allows me to really expand as the roots of my resources deepen. And there's so much that I vision and dream for and desire to experience myself participating in this world through the fields with others and with the unseen, that in order for me to begin to touch at these new edges, I need to continue dropping into these new levels of trust. And it's pretty powerful. So I would say that one of the really huge things that I got to practice last year is the skill of surrender. So that's going to be my number one. The headline was what I said about leadership is cultivating relationship to confusion and the unknown. How to trust in your decisions and choices when you don't have anyone who can tell you what to do. And so I would say that surrender was a massive, massive lesson over the last year. And I think that collectively we've all been learning surrender for so long. Really been learning surrender going back pre-COVID. Different challenges in surrender that have felt hard and have brought grief that bring a ton of humility. And it's been quite interesting feeling into how, in many ways, I feel that my Piscean nature has supported me in learning these things and learning to be someone who you can say is skilled in surrender. But that doesn't mean I don't also have so many parts of me who just wanted it to go a particular way, just want to know that everything's going to be okay. And, looks like I'm in one of those surrender lessons again. Hello. This kind of like learning how to continue to drop into softening, releasing the grips, releasing the tightness. Got to blow out a couple more candles. Just getting low. Releasing these grips, it feels like a larger collective, field-wide invitation that is going to be so helpful here for all of us as we, it's like we've loosened so much scaffolding that was hard and rigid. And now we're going to be able to have more flexibility to regroove, to reprogram, to reweave our interconnectedness from places within us, because we can only regroove our interconnectedness from within us. So what's going on in us, Within us, we are able to loosen the grips on control, loosen the grips on expectation, which is going to be my next one, and loosen the grips of shame conditioning that brings us perfectionism, expertise culture, urgent culture, hypervigilance. Those all manifest in the body as hardening. They all manifest as rigidity in the body. And so this skill and surrender is really a softening. It's a softening, and it's one that wants so much of our compassion, because there are parts of us that truly do not trust that we can survive here without that hypervigilance, without that perfectionism, that no one will pay us, no one will love us, no one will respect us if we don't have all of these guards, these taskmasters who are making sure that everything gets tightened up. So it feels like right now the energy is very still in surrendering. It's such a big thing that retrograde energy gives us, these retrograde opportunities to practice surrender. It's some part of our storytelling, some part of our way of doing things, sometimes of our way of understanding the world. And this softening is important. We're going to be continuing to be learning this as the nodes shift into Pisces and Virgo, with the North Node in Pisces, and Pisces continuing to support us in softening where we just don't need to be hard, where a tightening for the purpose of hyper-functioning is not what's called for. And this isn't to shame Virgo. We're all 12 signs. And because of our conditioning, each of the signs can manifest through these ways that ultimately are really hard on our bodies and hard on ourselves and hard on our relationships. So it's a Piscean invitation that we're moving through with the North Node this coming year. And a lot of that to me is going to feel like skills and surrender. That can be really hard for the parts of us that have shame around like self-abandonment or giving ourselves over to other people. Like when we're healing by learning what it is to have boundaries so that we can be better at protecting ourselves and loving ourselves, then surrender can feel like the opposite of protecting. It can feel like the opposite of where we're wanting to go with our abilities in the world. So I do know that it's true that for me, like we're learning them together, like learning boundaries that are supportive for you to have for yourself so that you can stay true to yourself, stay honest with yourself, give yourself what you most want and need. And at the same time, surrender is also side by side another thing that we learn. And where we learn when, was it boundaries or was I putting a wall up actually? Is it boundaries or am I being hypervigilant? And the nuances of that is part of what I teach in my classrooms. It's part of what we're all in a long-term curriculum with. Like it takes time and it actually takes like bumping up against the experience of that discernment in order to grow the discernment I have found to be true. It's not like we get to a place where 100% of the time it's so obvious to us the difference between boundaries and hypervigilance. It's a process and a practice. This is something that I really want to be focusing on in Seeding the Year this year, which is my annual teaching framework for working with January, for working with looking ahead at a Gregorian calendar year, for being with this time of year, which tends to bring up a lot of calendar shame, time shame. Who am I and what am I even doing? Another year and I'm still like this fucking mess. Like, every year I teach Seeding the Year a little bit different, depending on the wisdom that feels like it's coming through. And so this question of surrender is something that I'll be weaving into the workshop this year. This year, I'm doing it 3 days, 3 2-hour workshops. They're all going to be delicious, asynchronous or synchronous if you can come live. And they're going to be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, January 16th, 17th, 18th. So, because this question of surrender feels extremely potent for how we allow what we plant in our lives to grow and bloom and thrive and become nectar for the ecosystem. Same with these other two that I learned last year. One of the things I kept noticing last year, and I was really moved by this in reviewing my notes because it was coming up a lot at the very end, and then reviewing my notes last year, I was like, wow, it was a theme the whole year. This is a question that, like, a topic that is important to think about. It's an important topic for those of us who are magicians, who have things that we would like to co-create with the universe into form and grow them here on the earthly plane. So it's this question of working with expectation. There's a couple words that are all sort of related here. And one of them is expectation. Another is assumption, when we assume things. And then another one is anticipation, which has another quality. And one of the things that I kept seeing in this last year is how powerful it is for our magic to sit back inside of the energy of anticipation rather than being in like a brow forward stance of expecting. These feel energetically different in the body. That's why I think to me, anticipation feels like sitting back into ourselves, holding the energy of being supported, holding the energy of the dream, holding the energy of the vision, and opening ourselves to the incoming version of what we've seeded, SEED, into the field, as it comes back to us to surprise us in how it now looks now that it's been in co-creation with the field and with the universe. So there's an aspect of letting the thing be seeded, the dream, the picture, from our own desire space, and then sitting back and trusting that we're being supported and that it's going to be so amazing how it wants to come through the energetics of the larger field that we're in. That is a frequency that takes practice, and it takes trust. And the trust grows through the practice. And that is an energy that is extremely magical and magnetic. And I also am able to see how anytime I'm coming in more from an expectation, like an assumption, where I have a picture of what I want to have happen, and I'm more expecting the universe to give me what I want. Please match my picture, universe. That tends to not go well for me. And I get humbled by when I remember that that's not a super magical way of relating to dream and desire and manifestation with the world and the larger fields. And then that brings us back to surrender, because a large part of being able to sit back and receive the picture of what you dream is surrendering by softening into your chair, softening into your throne, and just trusting that it's flowing back to you. So, as a magical person and as a magical mentor and a magical teacher, this year felt like, whoa, like really practicing all the things that can come up with that. And that's going to be really important. Seeding the year is talking about and sharing the practices and the energetics and practicing what it's like to feel the difference between anticipation and expectation. Expectation is just simply less present to yourself, to your field, to one another. When we're in expectation, we're in a picture of future, rather than in a responsive state with what is currently here, especially with what is currently here in your body, in your imaginal space, like your imaginal consciousness. And even like subtle shifts in the body energetically can make huge differences in what ends up unfurling. I've been learning. And the final thing that I've been learning then is that it just takes so much courage to trust the information from your body and the information from your field, that it's that it's important to choose this and not that, all the other possible things that you could have chosen in the direction of how you're doing anything. Art making is the practice of making choices, and each one cuts away all other choices. And it just takes so much courage, so much bravery to validate the choice that we want to make. I mean, this is so much of the power of unshaming. And there are just so many times this year where I just wanted someone to tell me what to do. And I felt my guidance continuously bringing me back to myself, that I have the information already. It's about me listening and validating what I feel inside to be what I want, what feels right, what feels good, what feels resonant, and then moving from that choice, even if it's not the logical choice, even if it's a choice that might be judged. It could be a choice that's not perceived in the way that I meant. It could feel like a turn. It could feel all the kinds of things that it could possibly be, but am I going to validate it or not? You know, like how do you tune into these? What are the types of information? What are the subtleties? What are the energetics of the information that is already here to help you make the decision? That is really important. And that is a big topic for seeding the year 2025, because attuning to these subtleties is how you notice the compass. And we're the only ones. We're the only ones who can validate our compass and give ourselves permission to go the way that's emerging, the emergent path. And it is frightening. It is really frightening. And I would say that this past year, maybe the more than any other year of my career, including the early years when I felt so much literal scarcity and terror that this dream wouldn't be able to hold, and that I couldn't hold it through. This past year, I've learned so much about being in a wobble and all the stuff that's coming because of the wobble, and what is this wobble teaching me? Which really comes down to that idea of the ground not always being fully solid beneath you, and sometimes it feels wobbly. And the truth is, leadership, the ground often feels wobbly. And I have a lot of judgmental voices that are well, then maybe you're not a good leader, or maybe you shouldn't teach on leadership, But I feel like what feels more true is that this is actually the state of what leadership is. And it's learning to where to locate in yourself the choice for the next thing, in spite of the fact that there's it's water beneath you, not ground. A picture that's coming through for me lately is that, I feel myself in many ways to be in a kind of Knight of Cups journey in this life, my Mars in Cancer as my chart ruler. What if the picture of purely solid ground beneath me was always a template from outside myself that's not actually true to what grounding is to me? And maybe grounding for me is riding the waves, just trusting the process. And the ocean, the water doesn't have clear roads, gotta go in different directions. And just being with the waves of the things that come up and navigating from a place of where does your compass speak to you, even when you have feelings, you have wobbles, you have different emotional states that come from different parts of you. And where do you know in yourself that you can trust that you are being guided with the story that your life coheres around? And you will also even not have so much certainty in that story that you can't update the story as your life begins to cohere differently. So it's been a profound time. I feel myself truly hurtling, like some part of me, like my soul is hurtling into these experiences, like pummeling myself into them. It's like some part of me really wants to feel all of this and to participate in it and know these types of experiences and then come out through them. I mean, it's like really living my 3-5 profile in human design. Just truly, it's like the best feeling when I start to pull myself back up from an experience and I'm like, I can't wait to talk about this. So I gather these resources, the things that I learn from my own life and from everyone in my field who teaches me and supports me and challenges me. I gather these resources everywhere I give information, whether it's here in my new podcast, Crystal Ballers. Seeding the Year is probably the most distilled version of everything that you can get from me. That's January 16th, 17th, 18th. I've got some big updates coming for the Magician's Table 25. I'll be talking about that a lot coming up here. In behind the scenes, I'm busy. I'm serving multiple containers at once. In addition to the new podcast, I'm serving the new cohort of Underdog to Diva who are grappling with all the things that come along this leadership pathway. What an honor. I'm serving Emergence Astrology Year 1, now in its 7th month of the Hermitage. We have not seen each other since starting with Cancer. We don't see each other until the spring. Wow. And then I am making all kinds of things for Unshaming Your Chart. It's not too late to join Unshaming Your Chart. We have only had one meeting so far. So you can totally catch up and pop in. We're starting with Unshaming Your Rising Sign this week. And then we move to Unshaming Your Moon next week. And you can totally catch up. So I can't remember when I said the last day to join. I think the last day to join is January 19th. And then we'll go ahead and officially fully close it. But I spent all day Thursday and all day Friday last week making a resource library on Unshaming the Signs and Unshaming the Houses for the class, and just had that incredible feeling that comes from culminating energy. You know, I've been teaching this stuff for years now, and I can feel my younger self's take on everything growing towards current takes, and it's really beautiful. So it's an honor to be creating this fully new class, and it's not too late to come in. So those are the main things that I have going on, which is a lot. And I'm staying like in my boat space of allowing it to rock a little bit with Mars Retrograde supporting me in redirecting. As Mars is in a real private place in my chart, moving back into Cancer, being in my 4th house, like it's going to be interesting, in quotes, to see what comes up. I just suddenly, over the weekend, felt a massive. Oh, sorry, I was just getting a phone call, so I had to just check that real quick. Felt a massive desire to begin thinking about getting a dog. So that's also on my heart right now. I'm sending a huge hug through the fields thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting Moon to Moon. Thank you for playing with me. And I hope to cross paths with you in 2025. Cheers.